I understand you're still having some technical difficulties, and I want to get started anyway. That might mean I have to listen to that. Oh, Mr. O'Mara's not here.
We're getting him right
He's
now.
coming right now.
On 44, so you're going to courtroom Delta.
Do we need to?
They can't. Got it here. You want me to test the sound? Mr. Owen, can you hear us?
Testing 1, 2. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
doesn't fix the image.
Everybody, is the national record for versus Zimmerman, case number 12, CFA 1083.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess as a preliminary matter, we did have those two pending motions. I didn't know if you wanted to address them before or later. Or, sorry, one pending motion regarding the motion to compel that we discussed yesterday, but I can go ahead and proceed. The first witness is virtually present, as you can see. Thank you, Your Honor. The state would call Mr. Tom Owen.
I'm here.
Please raise your right hand for this.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Owen, if you would please go ahead and introduce yourself to the court. Tell her who you are, what you do for a living, and how long you've been at that.
My name is Tom Owen, O-W-E-N, at Owen Forensic Services in Colonia, New Jersey. I've been doing this approximately 50 years. I've been doing forensic audio and voice ID and so forth since 1981.
Tell me a little bit about both your academic background and the professional training and other circumstances affiliated with that you've undergone to enable you to pursue that career.
Prior to, I graduated from college in 1969 with a pre-law degree. My intention at the time was to be a lawyer, heaven forbid. And world doesn't need another lawyer, that's for sure. At any rate, that didn't happen, but I was involved heavily with music and recording studios and so forth, and all through college and everything. I moved to New York and started working for record companies, where I was in the capacity of an engineer, a recording engineer, and an A&R man. In addition to that, I went to Lincoln Center, where I was the chief engineer at Rodgers and Hammerstein Archive of Recorded Sound for 11 years, and I went on my own for Owl Investigations, was my former business, in 1981. So since 81, I've been publishing and been active in the forensic community.
And Mr. Owen, you belong to any particular groups in the field of voice identification and audio engineering?
Yes. There's a committee at the Audio Engineering Society called the Forensic Audio Standards. I'm the chairman of that committee. There's also a group at the American College of Forensic Examiners called the American Board of Recorded Evidence. I'm the chairman emeritus of that committee. And I've been in other organizations, the International Association for Identification, the Law Enforcement Video Association, American, I can't remember the name of one of them. Anyway, several other organizations over the years, some of which I've retired from because when you get to be a certain age, they don't make you pay dues anymore, but they keep you active.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have previously submitted for filing a CV of Mr. Owen. If there's no objection, I would tender that as an exhibit for this proceeding at this time, similar to the way we handled the other witness yesterday. No. Thank you. Mr. Owen, are the the matters that we've just kind of briefly been discussing more fully set forth in the CV that we've just introduced to the court that you sent to us?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Mr. Owen, have you ever testified as an expert in courts before?
Yes, I've testified over 300 times in approximately 30 or 40 states, several foreign countries. Never failed to qualify.
Would that also include the state of Florida, both state and federal level?
Yes, that's correct.
And just in terms of the types of organizations or clients for whom you do work, could you give us a little bit of a background as to who those might be?
I work for both the prosecution and the defense. I've also worked for federal agencies. I've also trained many members of law enforcement in terms of forensic audio, video, and voice ID. And this has been going on for some 25 years or so, as far as the training goes. And I work for banks and security companies and private investigators and individuals as well.
Mr. Owen, as it relates to this case, the state of Florida versus George Zimmerman, who was your actual original client in this case?
Well, the Orlando Sentinel, Jeff Weiner, called me and asked me to assist him in trying to determine whether or not you could tell who was screaming on the 911 call that the lady made from inside her house. I didn't really know anything about the case at the time, and he sent me the tapes, and I said that I would look at them, and so I guess he would be the client, and whatever TV station he works for, or newspaper. I'm sorry.
So you were not retained by the state attorney's office in this case before you did any of your work.
That's correct.
And you mentioned specifically a 911 audio recording. We heard that played here in court yesterday. There were several screen portions. When you go about analyzing or attempting to analyze a recording of this variety, tell us what sort of methods that you employ and a little bit about how long those methods have been around and who else might employ them.
Well, it is a 911 call, and there's always been this issue about screams on 911 calls. Practically every other or third 911 call has someone in distress or duress and screaming in the background. And so I took up this as a research project back in 1985, where I conducted a experiment with using spectrograms, oral spectrographic methodology, and basically was able to determine that even though a person's voice is raised by screaming in pitch, okay, the spectrograms look the same. The only thing that happens is the spectrograms themselves get either longer or shorter depending on where they are in the spectra of the pitch.
Why is pitch important to your analysis, and what exactly do you mean when you use that term?
Well, the pitch is the resonant the main frequency that we speak at. I'm speaking to you here today at about 130 cycles per second. That means my vocal cords vibrate 130 times each time I speak. Okay, that's the average male. That's the majority of the population. But if I speak up a little bit higher, if I speak up a little higher than that, if I speak up a little higher than that, then I'm raising my pitch. Okay, and there's methodology, old methodology from the 1980s that allows you to look at that high spoken sound and determine a person's pitch.
As far as the methodologies that you employed in this particular case, can you tell me, do you, number one, employ something that you referenced, I think, earlier, oral, meaning A-U-R-A-L, just sort of listening with an experienced ear? Is that one of the things that you do?
That's correct. It's referred to as critical listening. And there's schools of thought that are focus on just the listening part. There's schools of thought that focus on the listening part and the spectrograms or the visual part. And there's schools of thought that just go at it phonetically or linguistically.
Okay. And are there also available now, and even, I guess, for some time, computer algorithms or computer programs that assist in those sorts of tasks?
Yes, they've been given a 2013 fancy name called biometrics, but basically it's the same testing procedures of the oral spectrographic computerized programs that were available in 1985 called multi-speech. And not only is the program used in our field of voice identification or elimination, it's used tremendously in the medical community for the purposes of before and after, for example, cleft palate operations. A person will speak into a microphone before the operation and afterwards, and by looking at the spectrograms and listening, the doctor can determine the quality or the success of the operation. And this company that makes the automated oral spectrographic program didn't make it for voice identification. They made it for the medical community. And the voice identification people co-opted the program in order to use it for their purposes.
Mr. Owen, when you conduct an analysis like the one you did in this case, do you simply pick one of those three methods that we've discussed and focus on it alone, or do you try to employ them all together?
No, I employ the critical listening. I think that's extremely important. I employ the spectrograms. I think they're extremely important. They give you a visual representation of the human voice. The listening gives you the listening part of the test where you can listen to something. And all of us are better, some are better than others with listening, but all of us can recognize certain things. And just like when you play the 911 screaming calls, you can sort of tell whether you think it's one person or two people or three people. If your mother calls you on the phone and all that, and five other people call you, you can usually pick out your mother amongst the other five. So my point is, critical listening is very important. And you can get better at it by practicing and by doing a lot of cases. I've done thousands of cases. I did 1,000 cases during December and January and February of this year for a research project. So the more you do, the better you get at it.
And are any of the methods that you utilized in this case particularly new or novel or strange or unheard of before?
No. We talked about the biometric. That's been around for at least 20 years. The NSA, the CIA, the Department of Defense has been using this technology extensively, especially after 9/11. This is part of what they do, and they do it fairly well from what I understand.
I think we've seen a little bit about that in the news perhaps recently.
Yes. They don't talk about it a lot, let's put it that way, but they have been doing it, and even the FBI finally got around to including it in their forensic database.
Mr. Owen, as it relates to an analysis of this sort of tape, can you tell us a little bit about what you did in order to prepare it for analysis, and then walk us through kind of how you went about it?
Sure. The tapes themselves were provided to me by the Orlando Sentinel, by Jeff Weiner. I listened. There were two calls. One was what I refer to as the original 911 call, where Mr. Zimmerman is at the scene and so forth. And then the second one is a call made by what I presume to be a woman in a house close by where the confrontation is alleged to occur. And you can hear people screaming on the outside. And that particular tape was one that I went into that tape and I cut out what I felt were the usable screams and eliminated everything else.
If I could, Mr. Owen, let me stop you there. I believe you have sent a sound file, and with the court's permission, I'd like to publish that so you can tell us if this is the usable screams that you just referenced.
Yes, I did produce it, and I sent it to you, and I have it here if you want me to play it.
Mr. Owen, I got to tell you, it's not extremely lengthy. What can you tell us about how you were able to use that?
Well, the program that I use called Easy Voice will tell you if you don't have enough material. It would like to have 16 seconds. It can work with less than 16 seconds. It would like to have 20 words. It can work with less than 20 words. In order to run the test, I had to double up the actual screams. So I fed the tape twice, one after the other, into the program, and the program allowed me to use that as a sample. And then it tests itself in my testing. How you heard me raise my voice and all that. I took George Zimmerman's voice from his reenactment of this event, where he says, "Help me, I need your help, I want help." And he said that a number of times. And I use that as a basis of an exemplar, of a known exemplar, which is obviously he's on camera doing that. So I use this.
If I could, just what was your goal in doing this? What were you specifically trying to do when you compared the screams that you've just described for us to that known exemplar? What is it you're looking to do?
Well, the basic question for me was, who's screaming? Okay, I had no sample or exemplar of Trayvon Martin. Okay, at that time it didn't exist. Or at least it didn't exist to me. So all I had was Zimmerman, and that was from his own reenactment. So pursuant to that, I used Zimmerman to see whether Zimmerman would come up a yes or no on the person screaming.
Talk to me a little bit about this easy voice computer algorithm that you use to assist you as one of the methodologies. Explain which sort of methodology that involves and a little bit about where it comes from.
Well, it comes from St. Petersburg, Russia. It was written by the same people who had wrote the multi-speech that I referenced in 1985. And the purpose of it is to automate procedures such as spectrographic analysis, pitch analysis, Gaussian analysis, or that's what they refer to it as. It's really intra-speaker variability, okay? And it takes those three things, and it automates the process. So you could do 100 people, you could view 100 people in a second or 2 seconds and eliminate them as the question caller. This is what the NSA and the CIA are doing on a daily basis. And they need something to do that very quickly in the thousands of calls and to eliminate various people. And this is the type of software that they use. Not the exact, they don't use the Russian software that I'm aware of. They wrote their own, as far as I know. But they use this software to automate that process. And that process is an ongoing process on a daily basis.
Now, we heard yesterday that there's a lot of variables that can affect whether or not a particular recording, such as this one, is usable for the type of analysis you're talking about. You know, things like distance, things like different channels, things like the fact that it's compressed on a cell phone. Tell us a little bit about all that and what those sorts of things do to an analysis like the one you've conducted.
Well, let's just put it out there that we don't have the perfect tape. Okay, that's a given. Okay, all right. Given that, okay, we still have the question before us as who is screaming. Okay, just like you would if I had a fire 911 tape and somebody wanted to know who was screaming. Maybe that's the one that was set the fire. So having screaming on tape is not anything unusual or new or novel. Okay, being able to determine whether or not it is a person or not. It's much easier to eliminate someone than it is to positively identify someone. And what we have here, what we have to work with is approximately, from my tape, and I had a redacted version. So there's about 7 or 8 seconds missing where the lady's giving her address and so forth. And so if there's any screams within that area, I don't have them on my tape. Okay. At any rate, I have approximately 10 screams. And within those screens, each one almost to a number, almost everyone has a spoken word. Help, I need help, help me, and so forth. They're listed on my what I sent you the other day. So we have spoken word, even though it's way up in frequency. it's screamed, it's spoken word. Spoken word creates formats. Formats can be sliced like an orange with a narrowband filter.
Slow
And
down, Mr. Owen. You're going to have to explain what a format is.
Okay, a format is the acoustical energy within the human voice, and it's represented on a spectrogram as a darker area. Spectrograms are light and dark, and it's the dark area. And not only does it have a contour, but it has a shape. Okay, so all those things in the prior days, in the 70s and 60s, 50s and 40s, had to be viewed with analog equipment. Around 1985, when multi-speech and the 5500K elementary machine came out, it was all those processes were automated. So we have the benefit of being able to measure precisely, very, very precisely, all of these things. When I say all of these things, I'm talking about the position of the formats. I'm talking about the mean frequency of someone who's screaming. And when I was talking about the orange analogy, basically you're taking the screaming sound and you're using a narrowband filter and you're slicing it up in several hundred slices, and the distance between the slices measured is the person's pitch. Okay, the one that's saying it in their normal voice and the one that's screaming it. Only this gives you a way to measure it with the old technology. Now think about this. If the NSA has 10,000 voices that they're running from Iraq back and forth to the States, do you think that they have enough people to sit there and do that process for each and every sentence? Well, the answer is no. So they had to come up with an automated process that did that automatically. And they've done that, and they've been doing it for a long time. And that's what Easy Voice is. Easy Voice is nothing other than a 100 or less voice system. Okay? They have a 1,000,000 voice system. I have a 100 or less system. I'll never use a 1,000,000 voice system. I seldom ever use a 100 at a time system. Okay? But it's big enough and fast enough and does the same thing as that 1,000,000 voice system does. Just does it on a smaller scale. So I utilize that technology to, in addition to the old technology, to determine, well, let's see, could this be Zimmerman? Yes or no?
And
Now,
when you conduct an analysis like this, do you always get a result? Are you always able to render a conclusion of yes, no, or do you sometimes run into some where you're just not able to reach one?
of course. It's yes, no with a degree. It's probable with a degree. It's no decision. Okay, and there are a lot of factors. The tape's too noisy, for example. Not enough signal to noise ratio. There's a million reasons why it could be rendered not usable.
We heard about something yesterday called a Gaussian mixture model. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, and did that play a part in what you did?
Well, I don't know who. It depends on who's saying it. But the Gaussian, as expressed in Easy Voice, the manual and technology, is basically referring to intra-speaker variability. What makes Zimmerman's voice different from, say, Trayvon Martin's voice, or your voice, or my voice? Okay, so that's basically what that measures. And there's a million other things that go along with that. I sent you an article, several articles, one of which delineates all the, if I may refer to this article. And I'm talking now about law and the expert witness, which is, I don't know if you put that in as evidence or not.
Mr. Owen, if you're not going to, since we don't have it here to submit, let me ask you this. Are you talking about literature that's generally relied upon by persons who do what you do?
Yes.
Okay. And in a nutshell, without directly quoting it, could you summarize what it is you're talking about, please?
Yeah, there's two aspects of the oral spectrographic method. The oral part of it is the listening part, and you determine how fast someone speaks. How many words do they say in a second or a minute or whatever time frame you want to look at? The mannerisms, I live in New Jersey. People who watch The Sopranos are used to hearing "forget about," and stuff like that. And that's a mannerism that's idiosyncratic to New Jersey. If you go to Boston, they're going to speak in a certain way in Boston. So these are things called mannerisms. Syllable coupling. How do people put their words together? How many does someone start out like a ball of fire at the beginning of the sentence and end up in a whimper at the end of the sentence? The manner in which they speak is very important, and that delves into the phonetic linguistic people. They're very in tune with the spoken language and how it's done and so forth.
Let's go back to... Go ahead.
Let me finish. Visually, the spectrogram shows you the time, energy, and frequency of the human voice in a visual manner. Okay, and if you look at the spectrogram, usually when I say time, it's usually cut off at 2.5 or 3 seconds or whatever you want to put on the screen, and about 3 or 4 seconds is the most readable 5 or 6 words, 8 words, something like that. Okay, and basically, so the time is going to be fixed. The frequency is going to be fixed because it's going to be from 0 to 4,000 hertz, which is the speaking voice frequency. Okay, so you don't need to have 22,000 hertz or the sound of a CD. You don't need that quality because you're only interested in the voice. And if you have enough voice frequency, then it's a usable sample. So you've got all this information that shows you visually what's happening and verifies what you hear.
Mr. Owen, going back to the particular analysis in this case, you mentioned that you used those 3 methodologies that we've already discussed and employed the computer to assist you in determining whether you could match the known sample of the defendant in this case to what you had determined was the usable screams from the tape you had for the newspaper.
Sorry to object. I think the question mischaracterizes the witness's testimony that he employed all 3 methods. In his opinion, I think the witness said he used easy voice biometrics.
Sure. Mr. Owen, there's been, let me ask you, you used, as I heard you say earlier, you did use critical listening in this case?
Of course.
You have used what we've called the oral spectrographic method, where you've referred to spectrographs in this case?
Yes.
And you've also used the Easy Voice biometric computer system? Do I understand that to be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you used all 3 in this case?
Yes.
All right. Is that sufficient, Your Honor? Thank you. Mr. Owen, were you able to conduct this analysis given the materials that you had, and if so, can you tell us a little bit about how you did that and what you came up with?
Yes. I said earlier that I had an exemplar of George Zimmerman from his reenactment. I took the reenactment, I Need Help, etc., and I made a tape out of that of sufficient length and all that to work in Easy Voice. I then took those enactments, that text, and elevated it electronically. 3 semitones, 4 semitones, 6 semitones, which has the effect of raising the pitch up. I matched the pitch that the screams occur at, between 700 and 1500 hertz. Okay. There's also a sheet that I sent you from the Easy Voice, which shows that the 6th semitone, the 4th semitone, the 3 semitone all match with George Zimmerman's original spoken word. The screams don't match at all. So that's what tells me that, okay, it's not George Zimmerman of the screams that I presented.
And I think you said you didn't make a determination as to who it was. You made a determination as to who it did not appear to be.
That's correct.
And did you say earlier that that was actually a much easier determination than if you had to go ahead and also make an identification?
Well, it's always harder to make a positive ID, whether it's George Zimmerman or anybody else.
Now, my understanding is that you also analyzed a different tape in this case as it relates to a possible racial slur or something that might have been used. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And did you use the easy voice protocol and the other methods that you've already discussed when you did that as well?
Yes, that's correct. Sometime after I gave the initial finding about the screams, I believe Jeff Weiner contacted me again and said that there had been some issue about. Can I curse on the thing?
Unfortunately, it's language that I'm sure the court has heard before, so please go ahead and just be as explicit as you need to be.
There was an issue of a statement that was made as Mr. Zimmerman was talking to the 911 operator. He said, "These fucking blank," and so people took up the mantra that he was saying "these fucking coons," and so it was not something that I was concerned at originally. So I didn't know whether it was true or not. So I went back to the tape. And I excised that portion in which he's speaking, and I did a little enhancement on it. There's a sort of a whack right in the middle of the third word, and I was able to fix that and put it through several programs, SoundForge, Sound Cleaner, which is a Russian program, and I came up with "these fucking punks," Punks.
Now, let me ask you this. Those programs that you just referred to, I guess, could we call those filtering type programs to filter out sounds other than speech?
Yes, they're basically audio editing and enhancement programs, commercially available.
Anything new or novel, particularly about any of the ones that you used?
No.
Okay. And so you actually were able to determine that it didn't appear to you to be a slur at all, or a racial slur at all.
No, it was not racial. And I actually went on Al Sharpton's program in New York and said that.
And was your conclusion to that as firm as your conclusion as it relates to the fact that the defendant was not the one screaming?
Yes.
Were you ever contacted in September of 2012 by the defense team in this case?
No, maybe you're close.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Owen, you still there?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Owen, were you able to come up with a relative likelihood that the screams in question here could have been produced by the defendant? In other words, I know you said that you determined that it wasn't him. Tell me what about your analysis says that.
Well, my analysis says that I believe you have the latest Easy Voice sheet that I sent you. I don't know if you can see this or not.
That's all right. I believe the court and counsel both have it, so go ahead and explain it.
Okay. The program tells me that 3 semitones up is George Zimmerman. There's a little green dot. I don't know if you can see this or not. Little green dots. Green dots are yes. Yellow dots are probable. Black dots or gray dots are no. And so we have for the Zimmerman 3 semitones, the Zimmerman 6 semitones, and the Zimmerman 4 semitones. They all say it's George Zimmerman in one fashion or another. Against the screams, okay, they say it's not. It's a no-go, and it's only a 33% matching against the screams.
Mr. Owen.
The other ones are in the 70s and the high 60s.
Okay. So it's less than half of what you would have expected had it actually matched.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Owen, as far as the conclusions you reached, is it uncommon in your field for scientists to disagree as to their opinions of what evidence may show, even if they apply, generally speaking, the same types of methodologies?
Yes, they do disagree.
Okay.
It's like asking if lawyers disagree with one another.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Your Honor. No other questions.
Good morning, Mr. Owen.
Mr. West, I presume?
Yes, thank you. You can hear me well enough?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Can you see us?
Yes, if you could move over just to your left. There you go. There you go. That's fine.
All right, thank you. You mentioned earlier at the beginning that you had been doing this work for about 50 years. Is that correct?
Audio work, yes, audio enhancement. And I started doing the voice stuff in '81.
How old are you?
I'm 67 years old.
So you've been doing professional voice identification work since you were 17?
No, I just said that I started doing the voice stuff from 1981.
I see. So
I did. Let me finish. I made my first wedding recordings when I was 15 years old. That's how I made money when I was 15 years old. So if I'm 67, then you can do the math.
I understand it. So are you suggesting that doing wedding recordings helps qualify you as an expert in a court of law for speaker identification?
No, so you asked me how long I've been in this business, meaning the audio business. Correct?
Well, I'm trying to clarify what you meant when you said you've been doing this kind of work for 50 years.
I've been doing audio recording. I think the question related to critical listening at the time, but I've been doing this type of work since I was 15 years old, professional.
And in 1981 is when you transitioned into the forensic side of it?
Yes, that was shortly before that. I published my first paper in 1981 referencing voice identification and Dr. Tosi's study from Michigan State.
Dr. Tosi is a well-known advocate of spectrographic analysis, is that right?
He rest in peace. Yes, he was.
And that's the method that you employed?
The methods that I employed were the listening, the oral spectrographic, and the biometric.
The biometric came into play when, please?
It's been around for the last 10 or 15 years that I'm aware of.
When did you begin using biometric analysis in your work?
About 3 years ago.
And has it always been the Easy Voice Biometrics program?
No, it started out as something else. Voice Grid, I believe was the name of it at the time.
When did you begin using the particular software that you employed in this case?
For the last year and a half, 2 years.
Can you be a little more precise?
At least 2 years.
So would that make it June of 2011?
I can't say for sure. The software, the naming of it as Easy Voice was more so a marketing thing than anything else. It started off as a much larger system made in Russia for the last 15 years or so. Let me finish. They dumbed it down so they could have a product to sell with 100 or less voices. Okay, that was called Voice Grid. I don't know exactly when they first put that out. I had it probably 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years, at least 3 years ago. I went to the company and I made a suggestion, along with others, that they try to make it more Windows friendly and give it a marketable name to more reflect what it does. And that's how I came up with Easy Voice as opposed to Voice Grid. It's still sold as Voice Grid in Europe and other places.
My question, though, was when did you acquire the software that you used for your analysis in this case?
At least a year or two before I did the case.
Did you get a beta version, or did you get something that was commercially available at the time?
It was commercially available.
Did you participate in the development of the software?
No.
Do you have any background, any formal training in mathematics?
No.
Your degree from college is in history, am I correct?
That's correct.
And you hold no other advanced degrees?
No.
You claim to understand the math involved in the computer software that you used in this case?
No, I make no such claim.
Can you explain how the algorithm works that's employed by this software?
Specifically, no. I mean, that's a trade secret. I don't think they put that out on the street.
Well, just generally, perhaps you could explain the Gaussian component of this in more detail.
In terms of what?
Just explain what that means in the context of this software.
What that means is automatically it applies the algorithm and determines several factors, one of which is intra-speaker variability.
Are you familiar with the acronym is NIST?
Yes.
And have you submitted this software to NIST for evaluation?
I personally haven't, but the company has.
Is it your testimony today that this particular software has been submitted to NIST for evaluation?
I don't know if the one that I'm using is the one they put in for analysis, but I know that they put in their product for a NIST evaluation, and that's a matter of record.
Well, do you know how it did?
It did fairly well.
What would you describe as fairly well. Are you referring to something?
Yeah, I'm referring to the NIST document reflecting as to how well it did. So let me just, if I may just read this.
Well, before you do, what's the name of the document and who authored it?
This is a document from NIST that was sent to Alexei Kitzroff, who's president of SpeechPro, which is the American side of Speech Technology Center.
When
And
was it?
this is these are the graphs provided by NIST to him. And if I'd like to be able to read this sentence because to answer your question.
Would you be able perhaps to email us this paper so that we could look at it with you?
It's already been sent.
Pardon me?
It was just sent recently.
Well, when did you get it?
I got it maybe a week or so ago.
And did you provide it to Mr. Manti?
Yes. Maybe 3-4 days ago. What's today, Friday? Maybe Monday.
While we're on the subject, I think you also mentioned that you had prepared a transcript of the speech that you were able to identify from the screens.
Yes.
Do you have that transcript available?
Yeah, that's what he just played.
The transcript, in my mind, is a written document that identifies the words that you were able to identify.
It's actually on the screen. When you play it in SoundForge software, it's on the screen. It comes up on the screen. And each individual yell or scream is flagged.
Oh, are you saying that you have a written transcript that
Not-
identifies... Let me
let me-
finish. Let me finish this time, please. Do you have a written transcript that identifies what I'm calling a scream, but apparently you're calling speech, that articulates the word that you have identified for each of those screams?
Yes, it's on the file that I've recently sent.
Did you provide that to Mr. Manti?
Yes, I did.
Can I look at that?
Mr. Owen, do you have to actually possess SoundForge software to see what you're talking about?
Yes.
Do you have to know how to use it?
To a certain extent, yes.
To your knowledge, do I possess either of those capabilities at this moment here in Sanford, Florida?
Not that I'm aware of.
So even if I wanted to give it to anyone, could I?
Yes. I can print it out and from the program and make it available.
You could print it out and mail it if you wanted to,
I could email it, yes.
but that hasn't been done.
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Explain, just, we won't spend a lot of time on this because apparently you have not provided a written transcript of what you were able to identify as speech on the recording. Is that correct?
Not in the manner in which you're describing it, no.
What is the manner in which you're describing it then?
When you pull it up in SoundForge, it comes up and each scream is flagged.
Are you saying then that SoundForge is a computer program that recognizes speech?
No. It doesn't recognize speech. You type in what you think the word says, and then it appears as a flag, and it's obvious. And you can print out the list of the flags, and it tells you where they occur and what the words are that I've typed in.
So are you saying then that you conducted an analysis of this recording orally and identified each of these screams by the English word that you believe was spoken?
That's correct.
And how many separate occasions did you identify speech, as in words that you can identify?
I have a total of 10 screams, of which 2, I believe I don't have it right in front of me, of which 2, I cannot identify what's being said. So 8 total, I think.
And they were all help me or some version of that?
Yes.
Were you able to identify any other speech on the recording other than help me?
Your Honor,
No.
I could interpose at this moment. I've actually filed an objection to appealed on this. I think what we're entering now is outside the scope of that written objection this morning, so we wouldn't be.
But as I understand it, the objection was not joined to the court by matters that
No, Your Honor.
Specifically as it relates to speaker identification, those were the matters referenced in the motion, noticed for the motion, and testified about already. Otherwise, again, it's not subject to a Frye analysis under the McCoy decision. It's a decision that gets advanced if and when a transcript is alleged for juror use or presented to the court for juror use, but it's well outside the scope of the Frye hearing, which I assume is why it wasn't included in the motion.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on that, and it's going to take us a little while to do that. We got that motion this morning, and I'd like to talk about some of the case law and talk about the history of this case in that context. So we can do that.
Can I ask you a question, sir? Well, it might be an inconvenience, but if we were to continue this portion of your testimony, and I could take up the objections later today, and then have you available if we need you to give more testimony, that was
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I think you said you're going to give it back to them, and then you're going to revisit me later today?
I was going to let them go forward with the matters that are not covered in the state's objection, and then I'm going to hear the state's objection and argument about that, make a decision as to whether or not we're going to impeach it or yet. So are you available this afternoon?
Your Honor, I have another
We'll
suggestion.
go forward now, but then we may need to again this afternoon. Would that be something we'd be available for?
I'm yours for the day.
I have another suggestion. We can simply proceed with the testimony, and then the court can sort it out later, whether or not it's something that should be taken into consideration in its ruling on these matters.
Then the state's going to admit each thing that's being said, and I'm going to have to make a, I don't know.
The overall objection, Your Honor, is that witnesses that claim to have identified speech on the recording that prepared transcripts of that speech, the state claims is not a proper subject of this proceeding. And we believe it is for lots of reasons. And what I'd like to do with this witness is simply confirm, as he's already said, was he able to identify speech? What was that speech? And was there no other speech? And then we know what it is, and he's going to send us the actual transcript of the speech, I assume, with a marker where on the recording this speech occurred. And
State's position is twofold. And again, as a court in written objection, that is a matter that is well outside the scope of Frye in general, because you're talking now not about speaker identification or methodology. Now you're talking about what is and is not audible on a tape, which is governed by a completely different set of case law than the Frye standard. It's not subject, as I think the McCoy case makes pretty clear, to that analysis. So that's my first objection. My second objection is we're now asking the witness to, again, go ahead and engage in this, and we would be quarreling over potentially matters which the state has not set forth as intending to present in evidence yet. The state hasn't submitted any transcript for consideration or publication to this jury, and unless and until that happens, it's something that's really not right. We're arguing about things that may never come to be. So it's premature, which is why I take it was left out of the motion, and which is why it would not be a proper subject for the motion. Long way of answering the question. I apologize.
briefly, the history of how this issue came to be. I have to sort of try to remember the sequence of events, but First of all, prior to today, we had no idea that this witness had generated a transcript where he believes he has identified speech as distinct from screams. And I'm going to talk with him before the day is over about whether he used those words that he believes he's identified as part of his analysis regarding who spoke those words or who was screaming. That's a subpart of it that relates specifically to this witness, and it is clearly involved in the Fry hearing. Mr. Manti suggests that it's premature. Well, that's what Fry is. It's an opportunity for the court to hear the methodology, the application of that methodology to the specific facts of the case to render a decision whether it's admissible for the jury to hear. So that's the overall context. The history was that on sometime early in the case, Mr. Owen was identified as, I think, a B witness, maybe a C witness, not an A witness. We had conversations over the intervening months between then and now whether Mr. Owen would actually attempt to be called by the state. And recently we were told yes. There was never a commitment until within the last couple of months or so that yes. There is a witness that is subject to these proceedings today, Harry Holeen, who is from the University of Florida, who did a separate methodology. The court has that report. Where
It's actually one of the states, yes.
Yes, and that's Dr. Harry Holeen and Dr. James Harnsberger's report that basically is inconclusive, but the state is seeking to advance their opinions notwithstanding. So, and I'd have to be reminded as to the sequence of the events, but we received notice under the court's order disclosing witnesses of Dr. Holeen's involvement in the case officially sometime in late March, I think maybe by the 26th or 27th. We got a report from Dr. Holeen sometime in mid-April, 14th or 15th, somewhere around there, and then he was deposed, as Dr. Harnsberger was, near I think it was April 19th. We also received the name of Dr. Alan Reich, R-E-I-C-H, around that same time. We got and then we filed a motion for this Fry hearing, as I recall. And the state responded and said, no, we don't need a Fry hearing because all of this methodology has been well established for decades. And we filed a response to that. In the meantime, not until May 10th of this year did we get Dr. Reich's report, where Dr. Reich now claims that he can identify not just the speaker, but also identify speech that no other expert has identified, and apparently not even Mr. Owen has been able to identify this speech. So we got additional follow-up from Dr. Reich. We learned at his deposition on May 24th or 25th, I think it was, may even have been later than that he had done another report, and that he had done one when he was hired by the Washington Post, and he provided that to the state when they engaged him no later than July of last year. We didn't learn about that report until his deposition, which isn't complete, and in fact his work isn't complete, as we've explained to background. We're still pedaling as fast as we can just to understand what direction this is headed. And this witness has identified speech. He claims to be a voice identification expert, so I think it's only reasonable that we be able to explore what speech he claims to have identified, and frankly, to compare it with speech that other experts have claimed to identify perhaps later today. The point is that he clearly prepared a transcript, and that clearly entered into his decision as to his opinion here.
Maybe not two different issues. But whether he prepared the transcript, and whether he commented on another expert's work. Evidence rules provide not comment on another expert's testimony. But if he has prepared, if he has the capability of preparing of what you refer to as a transcript, and he refers to some words that he's able to pull up on his computer, I could deal with that separately. And if you'll give me a moment, Mr. Owen, would it be possible for you to recreate that document and email it so the attorneys in the court can have a copy of it and go forward with your testimony?
Are you talking to me, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I can do it right now.
Okay, so how long will it take you to do it, and how are we going to provide it? Do you have somebody's email address?
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Email address?
Yes, I don't want to give my email address over national TV.
I don't want your email address. My question is, do you have one of the attorney's email address?
Yes, I can send it to Rich again right now.
Okay, if you'll send it right now, we'll get it printed out. We'll take a few minute recess. The attorneys will have an ability to review it, and we can go on with that aspect with it. But
All right, show.
evidence do not allow any expert to comment on another expert's report.
Well, I think we can do that in the context of a Fry hearing. I agree it may be more limited before the jury if any of this evidence winds up being admitted, but that's...
Why don't we do this in this step process? Let's go ahead and get that email to Mr. Manti, get it printed out, have counsel in the court the ability to review it, and then we can move on to the next.
And while we're at it, the document that Mr. Owen refers to from NIST, we'd like to have that too.
The ability to fax or email the NIST document that you refer to Mr. Manti,
Yes, Your Honor.
if you will do that also.
Yes, sir. Yes, I will.
Kind of stand by with us. We'll give you opportunity for it to be printed out and for the attorneys to look at it.
That's fine.
Your Honor, if I may, just one last time in response to what you just said. We are now going to be talking about sort of product, not methodology. We are now discussing their opinion as to what may have been done, as opposed to anything that's covered in the motion, where they want to know about methodologies as it relates to the identity of the person making the noise, whatever it is, as opposed to going line by line or word by word through what any person, this expert, another expert, Dr. Wright, anybody else might think. Again, that's why that would dramatically open and put in unfamiliar territory the scope of a hearing like this. This is designed about methodologies, not...
I don't know what documents that are going to be emailed to you or what they refer to, what they're going to indicate. That's why I'm having an email, take a recess, that's what will happen. We'll be able to have a discussion hopefully about that, if we want that out from that.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Judge.
So what would be a recess and all that? Back on the record. Did both sides have an opportunity to review the information that was emailed by Mr. Owen?
Still awaiting it, it seems, Your Honor.
We're ready.
No, Your Honor. It's being printed and copied as we speak. It did arrive.
Well, I guess I'm a little premature.
Can you email that to me now that you have it? So I can-
No. Stand by. We're going to have to get the audio fixed again. Discovered that somebody just turned the volume all the way down. So. Yeah, I don't know.
You good?
Now?
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
How about now? Speak again, sir.
Yes, take. Testing. Testing.
Okay.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Okay.
Is it working?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Manti, I think we're up and running. Have we received?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Owen, we're still waiting to print out the documents that you emailed, so bear with us for a moment.
See, the microphone and your speakers. Okay, that's what I want to fix. We'll do it again. Thanks. Thank you, sir.
There's a little feedback coming through.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Some can't answer the phone.
While we're waiting on that, let us just go forward with the rest of the questioning, Mr. West, if you will. The court has had the, still want to give the parties the opportunity to look at what Mr. Owen was talking about, but I think that the state's objection is well taken. We're not here to determine or to evaluate the results. But we're here to determine the methodology and whether that is new and novel. So you could go ahead and question Mr. Owen in that regard.
Your Honor, we have not had a full and fair hearing on this issue.
We're not finished with the hearing.
On the issue of the state's objection. I outlined some of the predicate for it, but we never addressed the legal issues or the argument, and we don't have the material from the witness in order for us to develop that.
We're not finished with the witness, and I don't want to sit here and wait for however long it happens when we can move on and hear some of the other testimony. But perhaps we need an understanding here is what your interpretation of a Fry hearing is. A Fry hearing is to determine whether or not the methodology used is new and novel, or if it's generally accepted in the scientific community.
Well, the court is taking Mr. Manti's word that this isn't new or novel without giving us an opportunity to develop it.
Mr. West, I haven't even finished listening to what this witness has to testify to, and I'm sure that there are other witnesses who are going to be called. So the court hasn't made any determination yet as to whether or not the methodology was new and novel. I've heard from one expert yesterday. We're in the middle of Mr. Owens, and as I said, I suspect I'm going to hear from more. What I'm saying is that the definition of a Fry hearing is whether or not the methodology used is new and novel, and if it's generally accepted in the scientific community. And I'm asking you to continue with your cross-examination of Mr. Owen in that regard. So please go forward.
I'm happy to go forward, Judge. I do want the court, though, to keep in mind, looking at the Ramirez 3 test in the Florida Supreme Court, explaining.
I have an entire. Sorry about the feedback. I have an entire file of all the research of all the cases, so I am aware of it, and we will go over that when we have argument about it. But right now, I would like to go on with the testimony of the witnesses, and then when we're finished with the testimony, I will gladly hear whatever argument you want to make for both sides.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Owen, you are forwarding to us the report you referred to by NIST. That's what we haven't gotten yet. Did you send that?
It was sent in the original email, so you should have it.
And do you know if NIST's evaluation of the software was based on screams?
I don't know how they conducted their analysis.
But we'll take a look then at the report when we get it from you. You did not participate in the submission of this software to NIST, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you don't know, indeed, whether your version of the Easy Voice biometric software was submitted?
I don't know exactly what they submitted. I'm out of that loop.
What is the version that you have, that you used in this case?
It's the latest version.
Right, what is it? What's the version?
Number you want? The number? I gotta pull it up. One. 1.0.218.490.
And what's its release date?
I don't know any. I can't recall its exact release.
And when did you acquire this particular version?
This particular version I got. Actually, this is the one I used on the case, so I've had this one for a while.
Right, defined for a while. When did you get the version that you used on the case?
2 or 3 years ago.
So you're saying that it's not been updated since you got it?
No. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The first version that I had is not this version that I have right here. Okay? The first version that I had was the beta version of Easy Voice. And then I've received this one probably maybe a year or so ago. I can't really recall. If you're asking me questions, I can't answer.
You're advocating the use of this software in forensic settings, am I correct?
For voice, yes.
Well, let's talk about the beta version. When did you get the beta version and begin to use it in forensic work?
The very first version was probably, in terms of Easy Voice, was Voice Grid. It was called Voice Grid. I got that about 3 years ago.
That's Voice Grid, you said?
Voice Grid, yes.
And are you testifying that what the software you have that you used in this case is the same software with some upgrades? Or is
let me explain, because I explained this once before. The difference between Easy Voice and Voice Grid is the faceplate to make it more Windows friendly. The algorithms are essentially exactly the same.
Do you know?
It's easier to use. That's the purpose of calling it Easy Voice.
How do you know that the algorithms are the same?
That's what I was told by the company.
And what company manufactured it?
Speech Technology Center,
Where are they located?
St. Petersburg, Russia.
Did you buy it directly from them?
I bought from the American representative,
So who did you buy it from?
Speech Pro.
When did you buy it from Speech Pro?
That's the third time you asked me that question, and I'm going to give you the same answer. I can't really recall exactly. It's at least 3 years.
Are you aware of the Easy Voice Biometrics website?
I'm aware of Tracer Technology. They're the distributor of the product.
Are you aware of the Easy Voice website that announced the release of the Easy Voice software on March 8th, 2012?
Yeah, sure. I own the URL.
Tell me about that, please. Do you have you own the URL for what?
Well, when I came up with the idea of making the product more Windows friendly, I came up with, let's give it a marketing name, like Easy Voice or something like that people could identify with. And so I got a URL. These days, nobody copyrights anymore. They just go out and get a URL. So I got a URL for Easy Voice Biometrics, Easy Pro Audio, Easy, 5 or 6 Easies that I went out and acquired URLs on with the anticipation of, I really didn't know exactly what I was going to call it, but I had a pretty good idea. So I went ahead and acquired those URLs.
Well, was Easy Voice Biometrics the name that you chose for the software?
Yes, I did.
And do you have a financial interest in the company?
Yes, I do it outside with Tracer Technology.
Explain to the court your financial interest in Easy Voice Biometrics.
I paid a small commission on whatever you sell. Well, how many ever Easy Voices?
Explain how that contractual relationship developed and when you began to receive commissions on the sale of this software.
The contractual relationship developed by me telling them about the idea, bringing Tracer Technology into the as the distribution arm. That all happened, I think, about, I don't know exactly, I don't have it in front of me, maybe a year or two ago.
Are you aware of a release of this software under Easy Voice Biometrics trade name in March of 2012?
That could be possible. I'm not sure.
What is your financial relationship with the distributor of this Easy Voice Biometric software?
Can I just answer that question?
No, tell me exactly how much money you make when one of these programs is sold.
I make a small percentage of what they sell it for and what they make after expenses.
Please
Fair rates.
Please explain how that works, how much it costs, who gets what, including you.
And how's that relevant?
Would the witness be directed to answer the question, please?
Yes, there's no objection, sir, so you need to provide an answer. I said you need to answer the question, sir.
Okay. What's the question again?
Could
Repeat the
we?
question.
Well, I can say it again if you'd like. I want to know what your financial interest is in this software that you used.
I get a small commission on units sold of Easy Voice Biometrics.
Who sells the units?
Tracer Technology in Pennsylvania.
Do you have any financial interest in Tracer Technology?
No, I do not.
Tracer Technology pays you a percentage of the sales price? Is that how it's calculated?
It's a commission.
And how much is the software?
The list price is $4,999.
is it sometimes discounted? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you participate in marketing and actively selling the software?
Only in the respect that I teach the application of the software to students and other interested parties who call me and ask questions about it.
So, in other words, you have the ability to represent the company and actually enter into a sales agreement with a customer?
Well, I don't sell anything directly. I'm only as a consultant. If they have a problem or if they have an issue about what kind of material or what application they're going to use it on, I'll be happy to talk to them. Most of the time, everything is taken care of in Pennsylvania with Tracer Technology. They're the distributing arm, and they answer the questions and do whatever services necessary.
What is your commission?
My commission is usually after they pay the company for the software, and they pay their expenses and all that. Whatever's left, we split.
When you say they pay the company for the software, who is they and who's...
Tracer Technologies pays SpeechPro for the software, license the software.
And do you know how much that is?
They sell it for after the expenses and so forth to take it out. Then we split whatever's left.
Tracer Technology buys the software from SpeechPro, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have no stake in SpeechPro?
No.
You have no financial interest in SpeechPro?
No.
Tracer Technologies is the marketing arm, is that fair to say?
Yes, if you want to buy the software, that's where you go.
Mm-hmm. And how much does Tracer pay for the software that you sell?
They usually pay a certain amount, and if they're going to do large sales or sales to governments, they work it out with SpeechPro as to maybe if somebody's going to buy multiple copies, they'll give them a discount, and it's a typical business relationship. I'm not involved with that.
Are you saying that you don't know?
I don't know exactly. Theoretically, it's half, but sometimes it's less.
Are you saying then that Tracer Technology pays SoundPro about half of the retail price?
Yes.
Is that a fixed amount or does that vary?
Well, it's usually half of what they actually sell it for, not the list price.
Let me give you an example then. If you sell the software for $5,000, under this formula, Tracer pays SoundPro $2,500?
Yes, theoretically, yes.
And if they, well, yes or no?
Well, it's yes if it doesn't involve any kind of discount situation or multiple purchase or anything like that. If it's just a one-time sale at this price, then what you say is correct.
Otherwise, there's some sort of formula by which the wholesale price is determined?
Yes.
And then whatever that price turns out to be between Tracer and SoundPro is subtracted from the price that the customer pays, and then you and Tracer split the difference?
No, I think no. We pay for the software, then we whatever our expenses are on our end are taken out, and then Tracer and I split whatever's left. So it's a net number.
Right.
Okay, and the variables will determine what the net number ends up being.
Well, let's say then that you sell one of these programs for $5,000. What would you typically net?
Well, theoretically on paper, it would cost $2,500, more or less $2,500. then that would mean there's $2,500 left, and there's certain expenses and so forth. And then Tracer and I would just split whatever's left out.
Well, typically, how much is that?
It depends on, it varies.
Of course it may, but typically how much are we talking about?
Well, typically it's not really sold at this price because many customers are law enforcement and other people like that, and they're discounted to a certain extent, or they're buying multiple copies.
What was the last sale you were involved in?
I wasn't involved in any sales. I don't do that. I'm not a tracer. I have nothing to do with that. You'd have to ask them.
Have you derived any income from the sale of the software that you've testified about today?
Yes.
How much?
Over the last 2.5 years, 3 years, I've derived about $5,000. I don't make much money.
But you do make some money every time one of these programs is sold?
Yes.
How many sales would your income of $5,000 represent?
You'd have to ask them. I can't tell you exactly. I mean, they told me, and I have it somewhere in writing, but I don't have it here, and I don't.
You have just a moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you sell any units after the Orlando Sentinel?
Judge, he's already testified he doesn't sell any and hasn't sold any.
I haven't heard the rest of the question yet, so let me hear the question.
I'll be a little more precise. Are you aware of any of the software by Easy Voice Biometrics being sold after your published use of it in the Orlando Sentinel last year?
Yes.
And when you went on national television to talk about this case, you promoted the use of this software in forensic purposes. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, I promote the software because I believe in it, and I like being able to use it.
So every time one of these programs is sold, even if it wasn't directly as a result of your efforts or your contacts, you do receive some part of the commission.
Well, that's the plan.
I believe you testified that this particular software evolved out of the medical community rather than the forensic community. Is that right?
No. What I testified was multi-speech, which is a different program, was written primarily for the medical community, and it was co-opted into Voice ID in 1985.
I thought you said that the forensic speaker ID community co-opted the software from the medical community.
Yeah, but not Easy Voice. I was referring to multi-speech, which is a different program.
Okay. Did you describe generally that the science behind Easy Voice Biometrics is an automated spectrograph?
It performs three functions: spectrographic functions, pitch functions, and what they refer to as Gaussian functions, which to me is just a different word for intra-speaker variability.
Did you do any separate spectrographic analysis in this case other than what the software did as part of the Easy Voice Biometrics?
Oh, sure, I did. I ran all of I ran spectrograms, and I ran pitch, and I did all that separately in multi-speech, which is what we're referring to as the old technology, older.
Is that part of preparing the samples for use in the software?
Well, it's part of, when I do a voice ID case, it's part of any case that I do. I always do the oral spectrographic methodology as well as the biometric methodology.
So let's talk specifically about what you did to prepare the voice samples for use in the Easy Voice biometric software. Once you received the sample from the Orlando Sentinel, what was your first step?
My first step was to listen to it. My second step was to target and take out all of the screams, usable screams, and replace them in a file by themselves without anybody else talking or without any spaces in between.
Let me stop you there. So you attempted to isolate the sound that you've called screams to eliminate masking and overlapping and other things that might be otherwise on the recording?
That's correct.
And were you able to do that?
Sure.
And what did you do next?
Then I listened to the screams, and at that time, the only thing that we had is the other 911 call from with Zimmerman's voice on it. Okay. So I did a pitch analysis on Zimmerman's voice, of him talking, and
Was your pitch analysis oral?
both oral and I did it through multi-speech.
Multi-speech is software that's commercially available?
Yes.
And what's its purpose?
Its purpose, its real purpose, is in the medical community to determine lots of things having to do with the throat and the articulation of our lips and our ears. Our lips and our septum and our tongue and all the parts that make up speech and perform and articulate speech. And the way it's used in hospitals is, like I said before, they would take spectrograms of someone saying, a certain word phrases before an operation on their jaw, on their cleft palate, on their accident reconstruction. They would do that, and then they would try to do it after the surgery to see their percent of improvement.
How did this program assist you in your speaker identification process?
Well, it performs all the functions in the voice community that they're necessary in the voice community. It does the speech analysis. It computes the numbers for you. It prints out what those numbers are. So it takes the voice, whatever you give it, and it tells you statistically how it measures up.
How it measures up to what?
To the normal human voice. So if my normal pitch is 130 hertz per second, and George Zimmerman is 140, and you're 150 or something like that, it will give you that information.
And how was that of value to you in this case to identify the pitch of Mr. Zimmerman's voice?
Well, that was we had at the time. We had him. We could identify his pitch from the first 911 call, and then we could take his pitch and look to see at the pitch of the screaming. Okay, and I explained before, in order to determine that, you take the modulation of the screams, slice it like an orange, spectrographically, make a measurement between where the formats lay, distance between each format, and you come up with a number, and then you compare the two. Then the second time I did this was after the Orlando Sentinel thing, and then the reenactment came out, and then I got the reenactment of him saying, "Help me and help me and help me," and then that was the second stage of the analysis. Okay, and that's what you have today. You have both of them.
So the multi-speech was used to process the speech that was ultimately put in the Easy Voice biometrics software?
Yes.
Did you alter the speech? Did you change the pitch or do anything to it?
Yes, I electronically raised Zimmerman up to the point where the screams occur from a frequency standpoint.
So if I understand,
And I compared him, like I said before, at his normal voice, up 3 semitones, up 4 semitones, up 6 semitones, or 3, I think, yeah, 3, 4, and 6 semitones, which is basically, I have to step up, music on a musical scale. Think of it as like a guitar, and the steps, the frets, represent the half step, the next half step up or down. And so that's what a semitone is. And this is, as I already testified, this was a study that I did in 1985, presented at a conference. Back then, in those days, there was an issue of people using pitch transposers to make fraudulent calls and order stuff and stuff like that. It still goes on today, but not as much. And there was I had several cases where I had to try to decode that sort of thing.
But let me understand, first of all, what your methodology is. That's what I'm focusing on for the moment. So you took part of Mr. Zimmerman's voice, either from the non-emergency call he made or to the attempt at reenactment, isolated certain parts of that speech, and then raised the pitch before you put it in the Easy Voice biometric software?
As I put that speech in without raising anything, and then I elevated it electronically so it would be in the same pitch range as the screens.
In other words, you altered the exemplar speech to more closely match the unknown speech?
Initially, no, I didn't have any exemplar speech. That was the second. That was after he did the reenactment. And yes, I had the bass. You had the bass. You had one that's been elevated 3 semitones, 4 semitones, 6 semitones. Okay.
Can you cite any research or studies that discuss that method in speaker identification?
I told you I did a study in 1985 and made a videotape of it and presented it at a conference.
Right. I'm talking about anyone other than yourself.
I've not been able to find any papers specifically about that sort of study.
Are you aware of any studies that support speaker identification when the unknown sample is screaming?
Nothing I'm aware of. I don't think it's been done other than what I did in '85. I also did it for a plane crash issue where people were screaming. That was about 5 years ago.
You acknowledge, though, that the samples that you used to attempt to identify the speaker were speech samples of someone screaming.
Well, I had to, that's the whole purpose of the exercise. You have to be able to compare a known and an unknown. The unknown is George Zimmerman. The unknown is the person screaming on the tape.
Are you aware of studies and research that support speaker identification through the comparison of screams to normal speech or near normal speech?
I have not personally seen any studies. I don't even know if that's ever been done in this respect.
After you listened to the 911 call and extracted what you believe were, did you say 10 screams?
Yes.
Was that your voice sample that you used, 10 separate screams?
Yes, that's what I was able to get from that tape before the shot.
And how much, what was the duration of those 10 screams altogether?
About 7 seconds.
So after distilling all of the screams, let me back up. Did you capture all of the speech or screams on the recording that you could identify?
Yes, I captured all the screams on the recording that were audible.
I'm sorry, you captured all of the screams that were audible?
Yes.
Did you capture all of the speech that was audible other than the 911 operator or the person on the phone?
I'm sorry. Initially, sure. I have all the, I have the entire phone call with the exception of the redacted portion. Is that what you're referring to?
Well,
What other?
what I'm trying to understand is you talked earlier about having a transcript of the speech on the recording, and I'm asking, did you capture all of the recorded speech other than the 911 operator and the speaker on the phone?
Relative to the screen. Correct.
Did you hear other words being spoken on the recording that you didn't include in your sample?
No.
So once you had those samples and you said altogether it's about 7 seconds, is that correct?
That's correct.
I believe you said earlier that you want 16 seconds of speech. Is that right?
Well, that's the software. We'd like to see 16 seconds. If you put in 7 seconds, the software comes back and tells you the sample's not long enough.
All right. So if you put, if
Let me finish.
sure.
So I doubled up. Okay, I repeated the audio twice, and then the program accepted it and ran the analysis using the thing repeated twice.
Are you aware of any studies or research or peer reviews of this software using that method that you just described, where you entered less than enough speech by doubling up?
You just misspoke. You don't enter less speech by doubling up. You increase the speech by doubling up.
So if I say hello, and then I say it, and then you tape that and play it 16 times in a row, are you saying that is 16 seconds of speech that's appropriate for your software?
No, not as far as doubling up, what effect that has, it only allows it gives the program enough information to be able to make a decision.
So in other words, unless you had actually taken the recordings and looped them, the machine would have rejected this sample as being insufficient for analysis.
The program will not run the biometric analysis the first time I gave it 6 seconds or 7 seconds, whatever it was. As the screen comes up and tells you that. And so, in talking with the company, I said, well, is there a problem with doubling up? Or if you have more words, adding more words. We didn't have any more words, so we had to go with what we had.
All right, so who did you...
I doubled up and went to the program accepted it to do the analysis.
Because it thought there was more speech than in fact what there was.
Well, it knows there's more speech because it's being able to analyze it.
So you could have done it 3 or 4 times, and it would have thought there was 3 or 4 times as much speech.
Well, it only needs what it needs. But the maximum is 96 seconds, so you don't want to put any more than 96 seconds.
So when you realized there was a problem with the speech sample in this case, separate from all of the other problems that might exist with the speech sample, it simply wasn't long enough for the machine to do its work. Is that correct?
It wasn't long enough for the machine to be able to do the comparison.
All right, so...
It had longer speed.
Right. So at that point, you decided to contact someone from the company to ask what to do in that situation?
Well, bear in mind, I've been using this company's software for almost 15 years. Okay, so
Excuse me, I mean to interrupt, but I thought you said that you had this software a year, maybe 2.
I say my relationship with this company, with the other software, goes back 15 years. So I had somebody to call, and they're noted as one of the top people in the field of speech.
Who is that, please?
Speech technologists.
Right. Who is the person that you contacted that you consider one of the top people in speech technology?
Well, it varied. There's
Who did
2 Eugenes in Russia that I talked to.
Who did you talk to about this case?
Let me finish my answer. I talked to Alexei Titrov remember. And so I've talked to maybe 10 people at that company over the years about a myriad of problems.
All right, so it sounds like, though, in this case, you had a problem because your speech sample was too short, and you wanted to talk to somebody that knew what they were talking about to see if you could still do the analysis. Is that fair?
You knew the program.
Right. And who did you talk to about the problem in this case?
I talked to, I believe it's Eugene, and there was two Eugenes. There was the first guy that used to be the salesperson, and then there was the second guy that used to be, that is the current salesperson. I believe his last name is Landy, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
All right, so you didn't talk to one of the speech scientists. You talked to their salesman?
I did talk to the speech. They are speech scientists. I
Tell-
also spoke to several people who actually worked in that department, whose names that I can't pronounce. Remember, they're all in St. Petersburg, Russia. So,
Do they speak English?
most of them.
All right, so what I'd like to know, Mr. Owen, is you've got this software and it's telling you the speech sample is too short. And you are saying today that as a result, you contacted the company that developed the software and asked them whether you could double the length of the unknown speech by simply repeating it, and whether or not that would be acceptable in their industry and acceptable science?
Well, I didn't say, but I didn't ask them whether it was acceptable in their industry or acceptable science.
Is it your opinion
They
that
said,
it...
they said that that would be permissible, and
Who said that?
various people, the two Eugenes that I mentioned,
Do you have a note?
Eugenes, but other people that I talked to there that I don't know personally,
Do
that
you-
I haven't met.
Do you have a note of this conversation, the name of the person you talked with, their credentials, and any research or studies that would support the notion that you can simply take an insufficient quantity of speech and loop it till you get to enough seconds to put it in the machine?
Well, you can contact the place yourself.
Well, would you agree this is a pretty new approach then, even to this software? Had you ever done it before?
Yes.
When did you do
I
it
know
before?
this software, but I have repeated.
When did you...
It's a common thing to use this type of, for example, listening, the listening part, where the tape that was played earlier is exactly what we're talking about here.
Okay, but I'm talking about something very specific. You've never done this before with this software.
I didn't say that.
Well, tell me,
That's not what I said. You're misconstruing my testimony.
have you ever done this before by looping the unknown samples until you got enough duration to put it in the machine using this particular software?
I never had a program before that put a flag up on the screen that said you need a larger sample. So when that issue became an issue, then I went around and talked to different people and tried different things and arrived at a conclusion.
So I guess you're saying no. You've never done this before.
Not my testimony.
You've never, well, I'm asking you, have you ever done this before using this software, meaning looped the unknown language to extend the length?
No, it was never an issue.
So this is brand new stuff, isn't it?
Brand new stuff about looping is new.
And do you have any authority, scientific studies, peer review research, or even from the company itself that approves of this new and novel approach to this biometric software?
I don't know what they have on their website. I can't really address that issue.
Well, had you done all of that prior to releasing your results to the Orlando Sentinel or to CNN?
Yes.
You have no notes of indicating who or when you spoke to somebody in Russia?
I speak to people in Russia and New York all the time.
So you need 16 seconds and you found about 7, is that right? 7 or 8?
They recommended the 16 seconds.
Right, and how much did...
It really used less time.
what-
Sometimes it truncates. You can put 20 seconds or 50 seconds into it, and it will truncate it as to exactly how much time it needs to use.
Well, am I correct that according to the marketing videos, it truncates it because it analyzes it and attempts to identify enough speech for analysis,
Yes.
the suitable speech.
Yes.
So in this case, you want 16 seconds. And is that because you want it phonetically balanced and you want enough different words spoken that you have a reasonable basis for comparison?
Well, for example, with what you just said about it truncates it, if you look at the Easy Voice sheet that you were sent, it actually truncated the 911 screen tape to 4 seconds.
Okay, let me understand that then. When you did your extraction and came up with your 10 screams initially, that was 7 or 8 seconds? Sort of, okay. And you knew that was half or maybe less than half of the recommended speech sample, minimum speech sample.
You keep calling the 16 seconds the minimum speech sample. That's the recommended length. Okay, that would be the recommended length. It doesn't say to you, you can absolutely not use anything less than 16 seconds.
What is the minimum amount of speech that is required for a reliable analysis under all of the conditions that we've talked about already?
Well, 20 words is the minimum amount of speech. And that's been in place for the last 50 years.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, if you counted the words, you have about 14 words just in the one 7-second, 8-second section.
And how many of those words are help?
The second scream is I need help. The third scream is help. The fourth scream is help. And then I think I hear me, but I'm not positive. The fifth scream is help. The sixth scream is I want help. The seventh scream, I can't tell what's being said. The eighth scream, I can't tell what's being said. The ninth scream is help. And the 10th scream is help right before the gunshot.
So do you think then that the 20-word minimum means the same word repeated over and over? Or are you looking for something phonetically balanced?
Well, it's repeated once, okay? And then evidently it's offering enough material to the program because the program comes back and says, okay, now what you put into me is okay, but I'm only going to use 4 seconds of it. Now the program makes that, according to what you just said, the program makes that choice.
Let me ask it this way. The program told you that only 4 seconds could be considered for analysis. Not that it just needs 4 seconds. Is that correct?
No, that's not. I think you're inaccurate.
So your testimony is that the machine only needs 4 seconds?
The machine is comparing 4 seconds of screams against 6 seconds of George Zimmerman doing the reenactment.
So,
Speaking in his normal voice.
Can you identify which 4 seconds the machine chose?
No, I can't do that for this.
And the machine said it's going to use 4 seconds, but it selected 4 seconds from your sample that you entered twice, that you doubled up, correct?
That's correct.
So you don't know if it was 4 seconds sampled from 4 different screams, or the same scream sampled twice for 2 seconds?
It samples the whole file.
You just don't know the answer. Can you explain anything about the algorithm that would be used to make those kinds of distinctions?
Well, the 3 algorithms that are used within the software.
Can you explain those, please, for the court, what they are and how they might be used to distinguish in a speaker identification matter such as this, when you have a very short speech of poor quality that is far less than the 16 seconds, and that you don't have 20 different or 20 articulable words of normal speech or comparable speech to use?
And there's like 3 or 4 questions there. Let's go back and start at the first one. And now I've forgotten the first one.
Well,
There's 3 questions there. I can only do one at a time. So let's go back to the first question. Let me answer that. Then I'll answer the second question. And then I'll answer your third question.
Okay. Do I need to read?
Ask me the first question again.
I don't remember it either at this point. So why don't we do it this way? Can you explain, based upon science, how the algorithm would make those distinctions that you've just described?
The algorithms, there are 3 that I'm aware of. They do the spectrogram, they do the pitch, and they do the intra-speaker variability. They do a statistical analysis, and then they come up with a likelihood ratio.
Do you have any background or training that would enable you to know if it's working correctly or not under circumstances like this?
Yes, I've done tests.
I'm talking about background or training in...
I am not a code writer. I did not write the algorithms. I use other programs. I'm pretty good at it, but I don't know how they do what they do.
Okay. You had made comments before, earlier in your direct testimony, that the NSA, the Department of Defense, and the CIA uses this type of software, generally speaking. Is that what you said?
Yeah, biometric software.
Do you know of any of those agencies that are using the version of Easy Voice Biometrics that you used in this case?
Well, I was just told recently that 2 were sold to the NCIS, which is the Navy's intelligence division.
So is it your testimony that the NCIS is using this biometric software, Easy Voice Biometrics, for speaker identification?
That's what I was told.
And are you aware of it being used in a forensic setting?
You mean they just bought it? I don't know. I don't know exactly.
You don't know what their purpose would be. Typically, I think this software is designed to take a large number of unknown voices and try to narrow down that with the known speaker to see, to eliminate some people. That's basically how it's used?
That's correct. That's that's the focus of their big systems. Like I said, Easy Voice is a distant relation to the big systems. The company has them implemented in Mexico and other countries, and just like we do with our NSA and CIA, thousands of phone calls and verbal transmissions at a time to try to eliminate. It would be impossible to try to do this manually. So they need to do it statistically and on a computer to enable them to eliminate other people, to possibly track people by their voice and so forth. And it's not uncommon, and it's been in use for a long time at those agencies.
Okay, so let's talk, though, specifically about your analysis in this case. Once you prepared the sample, were there any other steps other than what you've said?
Well, I prepared the sample. I ran through the various methodology, both the old methodology and the biometric methodology, and of course the critical listening. And that's when I made the finding that I did.
All right, so
Let me finish. I had no sound of Trayvon Martin, so I couldn't do him. I had nothing to compare it to.
all right, so are you saying that you actually applied 3 separate methodologies on the issue of speaker identification here?
Yes, we always do. Most people do.
Well, so you did your own spectrogram or spectrograph analysis of the speech in this case?
Yes.
And do you have those recordings?
Sure, I have a report.
Where are they?
They've already been sent to Mr. Manta.
Explain that again to me.
They've already been sent to Mr. Manta.
And identify what it is that you're specifically saying.
Well, you have to prepare the tapes for easy voice. They have to be with no spaces in between the words and no spaces at the end or at the beginning. They should all be, if possible, the same amplitude and so forth. So the tapes are prepared before they get put into easy voice. That's not the case with the tapes that we have made for the multi-speech program. They're prepared and then
I guess what I'm getting at, did you do a separate spectrograph analysis of the recording other than what was done through the Easy Voice biometric software?
yeah,
And did you preserve those spectrograms?
I think, well, some of them I've already sent to Mr. Manti, and other ones I probably still have.
Your Honor, we would like to have those, please. I don't believe we've seen any of that.
Mr. Manti, do you?
So we can
I would
move on
assume
while
that
they...
This is a spectrograph, so I'm not sure what else we're talking about. If we could be a little more specific, that would be great.
Is, Mr. Owen, what you had just emailed today, is that the spectrograph from your independent spectrograph examination?
No, Your Honor. Those are waveforms and other materials, and no spectrographs were included in that particular email. Previous emails, like in the PowerPoint demonstration that I provided and some other things, contain some of the spectrograms.
So that would be the ones that have already been submitted.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of any PowerPoint presentation either.
Are they either one of these?
Yes, it is both of those. It's the same thing that council got.
Would you like, these were provided to the court along with the report.
Sure, I'll take a look. This I see. And these I have not. So I would like to have a copy of those if we might.
You can have these.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Mr. Owen, I'm looking at a couple of, well, let's just mark them so we can talk about them like that.
Sure, we'll mark them as Defense Exhibit A for this. Well, actually, we had one.
Yes.
So this will be Defense Exhibit A for the Fry hearing.
Could we make them separately? That way I can refer to them by exhibit one.
Yes, you may. The first page right there, Trish, the one closest to you will be A, the second one will be B.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. I'm looking at what's marked as Defendant's Exhibit A. So let me see if I can show it to you over the camera and see if you can tell me what we're talking about. Can you see that?
I don't see, I just see you.
Does that help?
Yeah, I can't read anything, but I can tell what it is. That's basically a waveform of four or five, I can't really see, different recordings. Probably, and I mean, I'm hypothesizing here because I can't read it, but they're probably the elevation, electronic elevation of Zimmerman's voice, 2 semitones, 3 semitones, 4 semitones.
This is as you raise the pitch of the voice?
Yes, that's correct.
Is this done through Easy Voice?
No, that's done through SoundForge.
So this is not the spectrogram?
No, that's not the right thing.
Is there a separate spectrogram that you provided or could provide?
Sure.
Okay. And what is in your analysis, what is the purpose of that spectrogram or the spectrographic analysis, please?
What is the purpose of it?
Yes.
How visual representation, energy, frequency of the voice that you're analyzing.
All right. Is it your position or your opinion that the spectrographic analysis is still a good method to use for speaker identification?
Absolutely.
And did you use that in reaching your opinion in this case?
Yes.
You talked a moment about aural spectrograph, I think. Is that a combination of the spectrograph combined with listening, or?
Oh, yeah, there's a paper, a 60-page paper that I've already sent there called the Oral Spectrographic Method, which a friend of mine and I published in 1996, which addresses this issue very carefully, and that is listening and looking are the two most important things with doing this analysis of the voice.
Okay, so let's stop there. So are you saying that in this case your methodology for your opinions were based in part on the aural spectrographic analysis?
Always both. Now that I have Easy Voice, I do it both ways. And I did it both ways in this case.
So what are the standards, the speech standards for the aural spectrographic methodology? How much speech do you need? Does stress or screaming play any part in that? And what's the actual process of analyzing speech under aural spectrographic analysis?
Well, there's actually a set of standards that are published on my website. You can download those for yourself.
Why don't you tell us in summary?
Let me finish. They're not current. We're in the process. We are meeting the group from the American College of Forensic Examiners. There's a process of updating those standards because they reference equipment and other things that are out of date and so forth, no longer available.
Well, let's talk though.
We have that to look for. We also have my 12 steps procedure methodology, which has been published in a number of magazines and which I've been teaching for a long time. And,
here's my question. Here's my question. My question is just tell us what you used, what standards you used in this case, what the standards are that you tried to apply, and then whether you had to deviate from any of those standards to do your aural spectrographic analysis.
Okay. Maybe 3 or 4 questions this time, so let's go back to the first question. What's the first question again?
What are the standards that you use in conducting an aural spectrographic analysis?
Okay, let's stop. If you go back and you read my papers and you read the standards that are published, it tells you what the standards are.
Right. So,
Second question.
No, tell me, for example, how much speech do you need before you would attempt an aural spectrographic analysis under your standards? And
It also calls for a certain amount of clarity in the recording itself.
right, and you did not have 20 words in this case.
That's correct.
So how were you able to do that then if you didn't have your minimum amount of speech?
I can't make a positive ID or a positive elimination. I have to make it probable or
So-
highly probable.
In other words, you had to either abandon your standard or devise a new approach for this case.
No, it's not a new approach. It's been in place for a long time. The idea is if you don't have, in many cases, don't have 20 words, so especially 911 calls. So it's 20 words to make for good evidence, really good evidence. This is not really good evidence. So the next step down is 10 words. Can you make a positive ID or elimination with 10 words? No, I don't. And I didn't make a positive ID or elimination in this case. I made a probable elimination that it was not George Zimmerman on making the calls, or making the screens.
All right, so you did not have enough speech sample, including length or number of words, to do your standard oral spectrographic analysis. Is that correct?
That's incorrect. I did not have enough words to do a positive elimination or identification. I can't say it's positively not George Zimmerman because I don't have enough words.
I'm talking now about the oral spectrographic analysis.
That's exactly what I'm talking
Okay, so with that method, you are unable to reach a conclusion.
No, I reached a conclusion that it's probable and not positive.
Probable what? Are you saying that based on your...
Yes, probable, no. There's three, even Dr. Sony said this yesterday, there's three things that you can arrive at. You can positive, yes or no, probable, yes or no, no decision.
And maybe I missed it. You're saying in this case, what?
In this case, my final decision is that it's probable that it is not George Zimmerman doing the screaming.
And do you quantify that in any way?
What do you mean quantify? It's probable that, first off, I don't have enough words to say positive. And secondly, I'm getting the backup from the biometric program that's telling me, by giving me a likelihood ratio with a green dot, if you look at the chart, telling me that is, in doing the test in reverse, telling me that that is George Zimmerman when I used his own voice. And the only thing he didn't, where it wasn't George Zimmerman, were the screams. So it's George Zimmerman at various frequencies up to the scream frequency, but yet the screams are not George Zimmerman at all. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry that I'm confused on this. Using the oral spectrographic method, which involves the use of a spectrograph and listening, is that right?
That's correct.
You were not able to reach an opinion conclusively.
Again, that's your testimony.
All right.
My testimony is that because of the limitation of the number of words, I can reach a conclusion. I just can't say positive yes or no.
Did you compare listening-wise? Did you match up screams from the recording with known voice samples of Mr. Zimmerman and pair them up and listen to them back to back or side by side?
Yes.
How did you do that?
By listening to the screams and the ones that are audible, whatever good, fairly audible, of help me and so forth. And there are several. And then compare that to him saying help me on his exemplar, the reenactment exemplar.
So the reenactment exemplar, would you agree, was not done under the same level of emotion as the screams on the 911 call?
That's correct.
You couldn't call that a comparable exemplar.
Well, that's correct. It's different in that respect.
Are you aware of any known studies that allow the oral comparison of screams from an unknown recording to a known speaker?
Well, that's the whole purpose of elevating electronically to the level of spectrum as where the screams occur. Okay.
I think.
Let me finish. If you take the spectrograms of a person in saying, let's say, for example, help me, and you look at the spectrogram of the person saying, help me, 6 semitones later, the spectrogram looks the same, with the exception that the high frequency is shortened. Okay. So,
Do you have any particular?
between that test, I can confirm that looking at the spectrogram, they're going to be the same for the same speaker. They're just going to be elongated or shortened depending on what frequency they occur.
Okay. Are you aware of any published studies that allow you to do that and then conduct an oral comparison?
I'm not aware of any studies per se, not that I've seen.
Have we finished with the biometrics work that you did? Was there anything else you did to prepare the sample or in your computer analysis that we haven't talked about today?
I don't think so.
May I have one moment, Judge?
Yes, you may.
On the standards, you talked about the length of the speech or the number of words. Are there any other criteria, standards, if you will, in your method for conducting an oral spectrographic analysis?
Well, there's a dynamic range, signal-to-noise ratio, whether or not it's the same language or not, which is biometrically, it doesn't matter one way or the other. So these are all incorporated in the standards which I mentioned.
Is stress, or the idea that the voice is a scream or a cry, considered in your opinion to have an effect on whether speaker identification can be done?
But any factor can, like stress, disguise, and something like that, it has to be taken into consideration when you do an analysis.
So we've got the length of the recording, the number of words being spoken. We've got the emotional state of the speaker, correct?
Yeah, that's for one, yes.
Mm-hmm. Any other important standards that you always look to?
Well, there's differences in the channel, how it was recorded, distance that it was recorded. There's a lot of factors involved.
Well, what are the main ones that you considered in your oral spectrographic analysis in this case? And tell me what those standards are and whether you deviated from them in reaching your opinion.
Well, I'm sorry again. First question again?
What are the standards, the basic standards that you would always use in an analysis like this, and where among those standards, if you did, deviate?
Well, the only thing that I, as you put it, deviated from, because of the limitation of the number of words, is it changed an opinion from positive to automatically change it from what could have been or may have been a positive to a problem.
Okay, so in that regard, what
Not
is,
right in the box.
what is the minimum probability of error in order to call an identification positive or probable?
Well, the last thing that was published on error probability was published by the FBI in 1986, where they said that there was less than 1% error rate in the oral spectrographic cases that they performed. And that's the last number that I've seen. Biometrically, I've tested the biometric system against knowns on over 1,000 occasions, and it has performed within 1%. So from a biometric standpoint, it's usually less than 1% error rate, and from a oral spectrographic methodology, it's less than 1% according to the FBI.
Speaking of the minimum probability of error regarding the biometrics, are you aware of any studies or research articles that have tested the probability of error rate in that software?
The NIST study comes to mind. I don't know how it was conducted, and I don't really know a lot about it, except that the fact that that's an organization that does test, does non-biased testing on people's products, and that's the latest study that I'm aware of. But again, you should check with St. Petersburg and see what other studies they may have had their software tested with, or what groups. I'm not aware of it.
I know, Mr. Owen, that you talked earlier about having testified as an expert witness on a number of occasions. I take it most of those occasions would not be regarding this Easy Voice biometric software. Is that correct?
Well, to date, I've only testified once or twice. Recently in the Sheila Davalu case in Connecticut, which was a state case, murder case, and I testified that she made the 911 call, and she was convicted.
That's regarding this particular software and this particular version?
Yes.
Was there a contested Fry hearing in that case?
Sorry.
Was there a separate hearing where expert evidence was offered regarding this Easy Voice biometrics methodology?
Let me think how many times I testified. It was discussed. It was discussed, but I had previously testified in Connecticut.
Let me be more specific. You've only had this software for a couple of years at the most, correct?
That's correct.
And you've only testified regarding it once. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that was in the Sheila Davalu case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You know that you're right now in the middle of an admissibility hearing outside the presence of any jury, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In the Sheila Davalu case, was there a similar hearing where your evidence was offered regarding the acceptability of this methodology in the scientific community where other experts testified?
There was, I had done it both ways. I had done the oral spectrographic methodology as well as the Easy Voice.
I'm talking about Easy Voice. Well, firstly, I'm talking about, was there a hearing in the Sheila Davalu case in which you testified about this Easy Voice biometrics that was subjected to a Fry test?
I don't think there was an official admissibility hearing at that. I think I only testified once.
Mm-hmm. And so this was never challenged in the same way that we're doing it here today?
testified
Well,
numerous times, and I did an oral spectrographic method as well. So
I'm being a little more focused than that. I'm talking about the biometrics approach that you are talking about here today in the Sheila Dowdle case. It was never subjected to a Fry hearing, correct?
as far as I know, it
Well,
was accepted.
let me-
I don't have the documents.
Did you testify at a Fry hearing or any other admissibility hearing regarding this software in the Sheila Davalu case?
It was not a separate. There was no separate hearing. Whether or not there was Fry business going on, I can't really recall.
Were you ever cross-examined outside the presence of the jury regarding your methodology regarding easy voice biometrics?
Yes,
By whom?
by both sides.
And who represented the defendant?
Which I can't remember the lawyer's name. She represented herself, and she had a lawyer, a local lawyer from Connecticut, evidently a well-known lawyer, but I don't remember his name. The case is online. You can look it up.
Certainly. So I'm not quite clear what your testimony is, though. You did testify, and you testified in that case, but to your knowledge, it was not subjected to a Fry determination, as we're doing here today, or other admissibility threshold determination.
Well, once again, there was no separate hearing. Whether it was subjected to the Fry or Dahlberg or whatever, I don't recall.
Were you cross-examined at trial then? Is that what you mean?
Yes,
And were you cross-examined by the other lawyer or by the defendant?
both.
All right, so your recollection is that during your testimony regarding the biometrics software that Ms. Davalu cross-examined you herself?
And the other attorney, that's correct.
Very well. One moment, please, Judge.
Thank you very much. Any redirect?
Thank you. Mr. Owen, over your right shoulder, I see some kind of equipment on that desk behind you there. What is that?
That's a microscope.
Can you use that thing?
I sure can.
Been using it a long time?
Haven't used it in a while. It's for doing the magnetic development of analog tape.
So that microscope would contain things like lenses and prisms and other sorts of things?
I'm sure it does.
Can you use that microscope, and do you use it in the normal course of your business?
Absolutely.
Do you know how to build or otherwise assemble that microscope, its parts, or create the lenses or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You've been asked about whether you wrote or can explain in mathematical or code terms the algorithms associated with the Easy Voice biometric software. I think your answer was you're not a programmer. Did I hear that right?
That's correct.
Does that affect your ability to understand how it works and use it?
No, not at all. I also use Word and WordPerfect, and if I had to be a Microsoft programmer to use that, I'd be in trouble, and so should 90% of the rest of the world.
Okay. We're using Skype here today.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you familiar with the ins and outs of every bit of this code affiliated with that software?
I wish I was.
All right.
Given our experience.
And sometimes external factors, such as the audio difficulties we've been having this morning, causing feedback and other things, do come into play and sometimes affect whether we have a perfect connection or not. Would you agree with me there?
That's correct.
Okay. Are we still having this conversation and still able to effectively communicate?
Yes, we are.
Did I understand you to testify to Mr. West that screaming is certainly one factor that needs to be considered along with a list of environmental and other things that were gone through? You remember that testimony?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Is there any study that you're aware of that says just because other factors might be present, whether it's the fact that it's a scream, whether it's the fact that it's a cell phone, any of those other things he talked about, are you aware of any studies that says you should therefore automatically abandon any attempt to arrive at a conclusion?
No. Let me
help you out, Joe.
Okay. Let me ask you this, just in general. There was an awful lot of reference about, are you familiar with studies that say this, and are you familiar with studies that say that? Have you seen studies that arrive at almost the opposite conclusions from each other when discussing even the same evidence in your experience?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think you referenced it earlier as expecting scientists to always agree is like expecting lawyers to always agree.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. West actually characterized the elevation of the pitch as, I think he said, the word he used was altered that sample somehow. Explain to me why you disagree that that is actually altered.
Well, basically, once again, going back to my testing in 1985, and again with the airlines case and several other cases, and the fact that almost every 911 call that you get has somebody screaming on it or trying to disguise their voice in some manner. So it's become a very relevant issue.
All right.
And, so when he says alter, he's what he really should have been saying is change in some way to be able to use the information that's present. Okay, not by altering. Altering is a negative word. Changing is not a negative word. And we don't do this stuff as trickery or anything else. We do this so that the evidence that we have on hand can be used in an efficient manner to arrive at a decision.
As it relates to that elevation of the pitch, did I understand you to say to Mr. West that using that same method, that the defendant's known sample was still able to be matched? In other words, that the software actually said, even though there was this elevated pitches, that what you knew to be a George Zimmerman sample was in fact George Zimmerman.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that apparently didn't alter or affect anything to do with what you knew to be a known sample, right?
That's correct. That's the whole purpose of the exercise.
Okay. You were also, I guess, let me rephrase that. It was said that this looping of the sample, where you repeated the same sample twice, I think it was somehow new and novel, and you said, no, it's not really.
Objection. I think that's a mischaracterization of the witness's testimony. He did say it was new and novel.
This is redirect. He can ask him questions based upon your cross-examination. You may proceed.
Mr. Owen, did I understand you to testify that what Mr. West called looping, which is simply repeating the same sample, that you've done that before with other software and that is in fact often done? Did I hear that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the fact that you also did it with this software was not new or novel, is it?
No.
All right. What might have been new is that this software actually has a message that said, I would like more, please.
That's correct.
Okay. And when you gave it more, it operated, as we've already discussed, correctly identified a known George Zimmerman as George Zimmerman and also assisted in your evaluation of the unknown sample. Did I understand that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I want to talk briefly about standards, because it's sort of almost the tone of it, or the way it gets said sometimes, that this is some sort of inalienable, unalterable, have to be followed, absolute list of ingredients, such that if one is missing or not complete or present in too much quantity or too little quantity, it will absolutely prevent you from ever arriving at a conclusion. Was that too long a question, or do you understand what I'm saying?
I object to the form of the question and to counsel testifying.
Overruled. If the witness, did you understand the question?
Yes, ma'am. I understood the question.
Okay, you may answer.
But now I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
All right, let me redo it. The whole discussion about standards, all right, the tone of it, or what I gathered from it, was that there is some pretension or allegation that the fact that you, as you reference certain standards, a 16-second standard or a 20-word standard or the pitch standard, that somehow if the standards are not always to the letter present, followed, or otherwise available, that they somehow prevent any scientist from conducting an analysis or a valid analysis. Do you understand the question now?
No,
Okay.
I object that it's a compound question. It may have been inadvertent, but it was conducting an analysis or a valid analysis. All we're talking about here is a valid analysis, not whether somebody can just...
Nobody's speaking objection, so your objection is?
Compound question.
Do you understand the question, Mr. Owen?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Do you need it again?
No, it's sort of like if the state of Florida has an 11-point minimum on a positive ID of a fingerprint, does that mean they don't use a fingerprint with 10 points of identification to eliminate people, possibly? And I think the answer to that is well known. The answer is yes. I can't speak specifically for Florida, but other experiences I've had in other states. So does that mean if you have 19 words, does that mean you can't do the job? No, that's not what it means. But according to the standards, which is what we're talking about, you can't say certain things. You can't say it's positive because you don't have 20 words. 20 words is the minimum.
So, it affects then, do I understand you be saying, perhaps the strength of your conclusion, but not whether you can arrive at one?
It affects the strength of our veracity of my conclusion in the respect that I have to drop down from positive to probable, highly probable. And that's not the worst thing in the world. It's very seldom that you have evidence that's good enough to allow you to do a positive conclusion one way or the other. Because 911 tapes, drug under by tapes, that sort of thing, they're never the best quality, even under the best of circumstances.
Does your conclusion here reflect that line of thinking?
Yes.
Is there anything new or novel about that?
No.
Okay. I think, never mind. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Try to be brief, Mr. Owen, but on this idea of standards, you're saying they just don't mean anything, that any individual examiner can set whatever standard they want for themselves and it's still accepted in the scientific community?
Now that's a ridiculous statement.
Tell me why that's ridiculous.
Well, because the whole purpose of having standards in the first place is to set guidelines. Okay? I'm following the standard because I'm telling you, oh, by the way, I wrote those standards that are published, the ones that have been in place, I and about 10 other individuals, of which Mr. Nakasone is one of them. And in doing those standards, we had to decide what was the best evidence, 20 words, what was usable evidence, 10 words, and anything below that is very iffy one way or the other.
So they're really more like guidelines than standards?
They're and they say recommendations. That's what it says on the paper if you want to download from my website.
So you can...
It's important, let me finish. It's important to have standards in any science, okay? But it doesn't mean, just like it's important to have the best evidence, we would all like for this tape to be better, pristine, wonderful tape, okay? It's not, okay? Regardless of how you cut it or slice it or talk about it, it's not, okay? It is what it is. So we have to take what it is and try to do the best job we can to make a determination one way or the other. So that's what I did in this case.
Yes, and in order to do that, you had to substantially deviate from the standards that you yourself drafted with the assistance of others X many years ago.
I didn't substantially deviate. I just didn't have 20 words.
You didn't have anywhere near 20 words, did you?
I had 10 words, which knocked me down to the probable category.
And most of those were the same word repeated over and over. That was in no...
Spoken in a different manner.
Yes, and in no way considered phonetically balanced.
Well, now you're talking about something entirely different. I don't know where you got the word phonetic balanced, but...
I thought you did... part of your speaker identification included listening and matching. And you have to have a phonetically balanced speech to do that, don't you?
Well, define what you mean by phonetically balanced.
Across the spectrum of, phonics? That you have speech that is normal speech that can be identified as to its unique characteristics. And you have enough of that speech that you can meaningfully compare it with another sample.
Well, in the world of academics, that may be true. But that's like saying, well, the evidence is not perfect, therefore I'm not going to do the case.
How much money have you been paid so far, in fact, for doing this case?
Well, I never took any money for doing anything up until the time I was called to testify. So... that's how much money. It's big zero.
How much?
I charge $3,000 pay plus expenses to testify, and that's what I've been paid so far.
How much have you been paid altogether?
2 days, $6,000.
And of course, that doesn't include what you might make on the sale of the software. So, nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manti. Mr. Owen is your witness. Do you have any last questions?
You chuckled when questioned about how much money you might make from the sale of software. Explain that for us.
Well, so far I haven't made a whole lot of money, and maybe enough to afford a few good lunches down in Florida, which I've had in the past.
It's been a year and a half, give or take, since you originally rendered your conclusion in this case?
That's correct.
Okay. And no huge influx of sales as a result of from the time you rendered the opinion till now that you're aware of?
There's always hope.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. No other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. We're going to go ahead and disconnect from the connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to break for lunch. It is 12:56. We'll be back at 2 p.m. Court is in recess.